Listen up.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It is episode 95 of Tuesdays with Perry. Welcome to the podcast. We're going to get Perry on the line right now. I'm going to give him the floor on whatever he wants to talk about. My whole point going into the election is Trump. Everything that we're seeing shows Trump is ahead. What are they going to do to bring the cheat? We're going to talk about this and much more. In a second, we're going to get Perry on the line right now.
Hello.
Hey, Perry, welcome to the program tonight. It is episode 95, Tuesdays with Perry, so our 100th episode is coming up soon. So, Perry, what do you think about what the hell is going on in the election? Everything is showing Trump up and ahead. What do you think this means? Well, how does this all parse out? And before we get into some of the other things you want to talk about, what do you think the Democrats have planned for what seems like an October surprise?
Well, let's say a second October surprise, because I think we've already had a couple, or at least one. What I think the Democrats are finding themselves having to do is now switch to Plan B. And Plan B is, what if Kamala can't overcome all her negatives? And that's where they're at. I mean, I just heard today on another podcast that supposedly to try and one-up Trump, Kamala is now not going to McDonald's to show how she knows how to work the fryer later. She's now going to go to Five Guys. I honestly, I'm at a loss for words as to who it is that's running her campaign. Maybe it's her herself, and she's not listening to the advice of those who actually understand how politics work. Because if that story is true, it's just a fait accompli at this point. And I refuse to accept that after what they got away with 4 years ago. Having said that, the Democrats are, in fact, resigning themselves to the fact that Trump's going to win. And I say that because it was just announced tonight that Uncle Joe, because he still has his war chest, not all of it was given to Kamala. And now he's funneling money to Democrats in key races. The Democrats, it's not making a lot of news, but it appears that the DNC is doing much of the same, because they don't only not want to be the minority party in both houses of the Congress. They don't want to be a miniature party like what happened to them in 1994. And for those of your viewers who don't remember what happened 30 years ago, Newt Gingrich, for the first time in 40 years, delivered the House to the Republican Party. And it was because of that and us winning the Senate at the same time that Bill Clinton was forced to move from a leftist position to that of a more of a centrist. And as I said previously, maybe it was last year, I pointed this out on your show. It was during those last 2 years of his first administration that he was forced to sign off on almost everything that the Republican Congress put in front of him, because his party didn't have the numbers in either house to do anything about it. And because of that, we got our first technical balanced budget for the first time in our lifetime.
Yep.
Okay. And that's what the Democrats are trying to stave off right now. And so what that tells me is the information that we're getting in the polls are not only becoming more accurate, and I'm going to remind everyone from last week, I said that from the last 14 days, specifically the last 10 days leading up to Election Day, all the polls are going to tighten. And I don't mean in how close each candidate is to one another. They're going to tighten in accuracy. And the reason why is because up until 3 weeks ago, all the polls being conducted were of registered voters. All you got to do is be a registered voter. They don't care if you haven't voted since Reagan. They just want to talk to registered voters. 3 weeks ago, the polls were more focused on likely voters, people who vote in virtually every presidential election, not necessarily off-year elections or congressional elections, but they vote in most, if not all, presidential elections. Those are considered likely voters. Now we're inside 2 weeks, effectively. Right now, we're 13 days out. And now we're going to see over the last 10 days of the campaign, when you look at polls, look at the fine print. It'll always tell you at the bottom what the margin of error is. The margin of error is probably going to get tighter also. So whereas there were some polls as recently as 2 months ago showing a margin of error of 4 or more percent, many of them were as much as 7%. And they were only conducted of less than 1,000 people. Now those polls are going to start showing a margin of error of less than 3%, or give or take 3%. And it's going to be most likely voters. And that's what I mean by the tightening of the polls.
Right.
Then you compare that information to, okay, where do the candidates stand from one another? How many points separate them? These are the polls that matter most. And the reason why pollsters do this is because I don't care if you're Nate Silver. I don't care if you're Rasmussen. I don't care if you're NBC. I really don't. It doesn't matter who the poison is. The fact of the matter is the pollsters that conduct those polls want to get hired in 2 years for the congressional and senatorial campaigns that are coming up. So they better be accurate when it comes time for people to actually cast ballots.
Right.
So this is what the Democrats are now looking at, and they're saying, "Oh shit, we're in trouble here. She is a weight on the ticket." Case in point, Mr. Invisible, Bob Casey, the senior senator of Pennsylvania, as recently as last week or the week before, started running television ads in Pennsylvania. I'm with Trump. Now, those weren't his exact words.
Right.
But he boasted about how he voted with Trump on key issues. Do you understand for a second what that means to Kamala's people? Talk about being stabbed in the back when they're scratching and clawing to get every Democrat to the polls, and you have the senior senator of your party in the state of Pennsylvania
right.
sabotaging you? That's the kind of stuff I look at to say it's looking really good.
Yeah. No, I agree also. My problem is what I'm seeing right now is that the margin of error, instead of getting smaller, seems to be getting bigger. And that worries me as far as the corporate institutions of media are portraying as it being a very tight race. I don't think it's a tight race. And that brings me to my next question is, what are they going to do next? Is they going to cheat? But before you answer that, I want to bring up the Joe Rogan question. Donald Trump is scheduled on Friday to tape a long form interview with Joe Rogan. It looks like Kamala Harris is not committing as of yet.
Well, because she can't stand the amount of difficulty that's going to be put in front of her for 3 hours of questions. You know, it's one thing if you show up 15, 20 minutes late to do a 20-minute interview with Brett Baer. It's another thing if you go to Joe Rogan, who is, if not the largest podcast audience in the world, he's certainly in the top 3. And he asks what I call our, you know, just common sense, average Joe Schmo questions. What are you going to do for me? You know, explain to me how you ran away from the title of border czar. Were you or were you not put in charge of overseeing how we were going to protect the southern border? Yes or no? She cannot answer questions like that over and over and over again. I don't care if it's 20 minutes, because all you have to do is watch and see how she performed with Brett Baer, and imagine what it's going to be like with Joe Rogan. Okay, so of course she's not going to go on Joe Rogan. She's not going to go on Dan Bongino. Hell, she's not going to go on Rudy's Revelation. Okay?
I'd gladly have her. So the invitation
well, you
is out
should
there.
reach out to her. You should reach out to her campaign before it's too late, Rudy.
Yeah.
What's the worst thing they can say to you? No.
The other thing was, so today in Connecticut, they were the 911 or the 911 call program went down in Connecticut, and that leaves people worrying about what's going to happen on Election Day, before Election Day. Do you think they're going to be shenanigans? Should we expect a cyber attack? What do you think the Democrats or the establishment at large is going to do if they think Trump is going to win? You think there's going to be funny business, or?
Well, there's already funny business going on. The question is, how severe is it going to get? It is one of my gravest concerns, and I don't say this lightly. The deep staters, as I like to call them, know that what's coming, the tsunami that's coming on January 20th, God willing, they are not only going to be discovered, they are going to be arrested, they are going to be charged, they are going to be prosecuted, and hopefully they are going to be punished with jail sentences for what they have done. And that's on both sides. I'm not just talking about the Democrats. There are plenty of Republicans that have done such heinous crimes to the people of this country over decades, but especially over the last 10 to 20 years. And, you know, you can look at James Comey, you could look at Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, you can look at Brennan. That son of a bitch, I don't just want him put in jail. I want him strung up by his nutsack. That guy is a traitor to this country. And this is why people like Brennan are out there and talking on outlets like CNN and PMSNBC, talking what they're saying, because they know that whoever the new attorney general is, he's going to be on that long list, and he's going to have to answer for his crimes against this country. And so that's what they're trying right now. I'm talking about the Democrats. And that's what they are trying to prevent from happening. It's one thing for Trump to get elected. And this is the thing I keep imploring people to understand. You may not like the candidate, I'm talking about the Republican candidate that's running for Congress in your district. But the alternative is far worse. And the reason that it's far worse is because if Trump were to end up with a Democrat House and Senate, well, the first thing they're going to do before he even takes the oath of office, they're going to move to impeach him. The new Congress would impeach him right out of the box. They've already said they're going to. Okay? You don't have to look any farther than AOC or Bernie to know what's coming. Okay? If they gain control of both houses. And so that's what the Democrats are trying to do. The problem with this for us, the patriots of this country, is if that were to, God forbid, happen, they're going to tie Trump's hands behind his back, and nothing that we want to see improved on, whether it's energy policy, whether it's the ending of these needless wars in both Gaza and in Ukraine, whether it is tax policy, the economy, nothing that Trump wants to do is going to get done. It's going to be exactly like Nixon was and Ford was in the 1970s. Okay? They are not going to be, they were ineffective when it came to policy. Whether or not Nixon was effective in foreign policy is one thing. When it came to domestic policy, he had to go along to get along, which is why we continued to spend money we didn't have. Reagan, the same thing. Even though we had the Senate, all spending is done in the House of Representatives. And Tip O'Neill said to him, you want to rebuild the military? Fine. Then you're going to give me all the money I want to spend on social programs. Right. Reagan saw that that was a bargain he had to take. We can't afford that with Trump. With Trump, he has to have control of both houses. That's what the Democrats are focused on right now. How can we, meaning the Democrats, how can we hold on to the Senate, even if it's only one, meaning actually two votes? It would have to be 51 to 49. Even if they end up with a 51 seat majority, they can tie things up, including the budget.
Right.
If everyone listening to your podcast is upset at the fact that for the last 3.75 years, actually, I think going back to Trump's last budget, if they don't like the fact for the last 4 or more years, we've been running our government on continuing resolutions. Well, I'm telling you right now, if any of you vote Democrat, I don't care if you like the Republican or not, if any of you vote Democrat, you split your ticket because you don't want Trump to become Adolf Hitler, because that's what the Democrats are saying. All you're doing is perpetuating more of the same.
Right. So
and that's what we have to fight.
Right. There's an argument again against ticket splitting. So if you're voting, you should vote. Might as well vote for your party. Before, I know you want to talk about the Iran.
And wait a minute. And if you're an independent,
right?
Because I want to talk to the independents that are in your audience. If you're an independent, you need to ask yourself, do I want my government to destroy what is left of the American currency? Do I want my government to allow these wars to continue? Do I want my government to continue to overregulate my life? Do I want these things? Because if the answer is yes, you know what? Just go ahead and vote Democrat.
Yeah.
And I mean vote for Kamala, because that's what you're going to get.
Right.
Now, if you want to return to the 4 years that we had of unprecedented growth of, and I mean in every single category, in every single demographic, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of whether you were born in this country or you became a naturalized citizen. If you want a better life, and we had much better, and that's something that I don't think Trump has spoken enough about in this campaign. You know, Reagan did a great job when he ran in 1980. And that made his job in 1984, when he ran for re-election, that much easier. In 1980, Reagan asked the country, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And people who made their mind up, like I did. I was 19 years old in 1980, and I literally walked up the steps of the elementary school where my polling district was, my polling precinct was, and I did not know who I was going to vote for. Was I going to vote for Ronald Reagan, the old man with old ideas that are in the past, or do I want to vote for a turncoat like John Anderson, who was a part of the elite, and he didn't want conservatives to sit in the Oval Office, and therefore gave up his party membership as a Republican and ran as an independent. So to the independents that are listening and watching your podcast, are you better off now? Is the world a safer place now than it was 4 years ago?
The answer
That's
is,
all I'm asking.
the answer
because
is no.
The answer, right, whether you like Trump or not, and you and I have talked about this ad nauseum over the past year, neither one of us really cared about the man from a personality standpoint. There was nothing I liked about him. I had a love-hate relationship with that man before he ran for president. I did not vote for him in the Republican primary in 2016. I voted for Ted Cruz. Okay? So my point being is, I'm not voting for personality. I'm voting for a president. I'm voting for a leader. I'm voting for someone who is going to fight so that my life and the life of my son, and obviously my better half, the life of my son, who is the future of this country, will be better.
Right.
That's how I'm baiting the independents that listen to your show to think about this.
Right.
Because that's why when I walked into the voting booth 44 years ago at age 19, I decided, as I went to strike off who I was going to vote for, I went straight Republican. Yes, I was a registered Republican, but I wasn't sure until I said to myself and stopped letting the media tell me how to vote.
Right.
I said, I want a better tomorrow. And that's why I voted for Reagan.
Right.
And in 1984, I couldn't wait to vote for him again.
Right. That being said, I got, in the time we have left, about 15 minutes, I want you to comment on the fact that Representative from Maryland, Jamie Raskin, said that if Trump gets elected, that they're going to fight the ratification or the certification of the vote. And then I want to ask you also if you have any comments on the Al Smith Catholic dinner that happened last week, which was actually pretty funny. And then
except for the video that Kamala did,
which was unfunny.
It went over like a lead balloon.
Right. And then and be sure to leave time for the fact that the Biden administration leaked intelligence information about Israel's attack on Iran, to the government of Iran.
Planned attack.
Yeah, planned attack.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start with that radical Raskin.
Ratskin.
Ratskin is what his name should be. Another pseudo-Jew. This man is one of those that should be on that long list of traitors. Because before he became a member of Congress, this guy was a radical. His name could have been Alinsky. He was so radical. If your viewers, any of your viewers, go back and try and learn the history of this piece of shit, you will be shocked at some of the things he's done going back to his college years. Okay? So the fact that this piece of shit has basically shown his cards, or shown the Democrats' cards, and said, we're not going to accept it. and by not accepting it, we're going to see to it that he can't be ratified.
Certified.
Certified. You and I both used the wrong word. That Trump cannot be certified, and therefore the election will be thrown into turmoil. Actually, it won't be, because that's why we have 50 states, and each state will submit their own list of electors. So, Jamie, go ahead, make my fucking year. I hope you fuckers do this, because you're going to be shown to the country, not to your party, because we know your party's a bunch of true fascists and radicals who do want to tear this country apart. Please keep your word and you move forward on that. And we'll see when the dust settles where you end up. And I guarantee you, you're going to be behind bars for what you are trying to do. You think, these sons of bitches put innocent Americans behind bars in a musty, mold-infested jailhouse in the basement of the Capitol for months. And as I've said before, to the best of my knowledge, there's still anywhere between 3 and a half a dozen people that are still waiting for their day in court. 4 years later, you people did that to us. Well, turnabout is fair play. And we're going to have you on record saying what you just said. So you go right ahead. And let's see what happens. But just remember, what you did to innocent Americans who did nothing more than protest legally and peacefully. I'm not talking about the rabble who threw stones and beat cops up. I'm talking about the thousands who were subjugated just for speaking their mind. They're going to have their day, and you watch and see what happens. That's what I have to say about Jamie. Okay. As for, there was another point you wanted me to make, and what was that?
It's a few days ago, the Al Smith dinner, where there was a comedian there, Jim Gaffigan, who actually
he's a Democrat.
Yeah, he drew some laughs, and it was actually pretty funny, and he dug into Kamala quite a bit. Then Kamala had that really lame taped address where she included a washed-up SNL star, Molly Shannon, with an old character, an old Catholic character, and superstar. And Trump was actually pretty funny, but somber, and he went through the jokes very reluctantly, it seemed. He even said so. So if you saw any part of it, I just want your feelings on that before we get into the Iranian intelligence leak, or I should say the Israeli intelligence leak.
Well, I did see extended cuts. I did not watch the actual dinner while it was happening. Gaffigan he wasn't terribly funny. And the reason why he wasn't very funny is because he's very angry. He's looking at this excuse of a candidate, or I should say excuse of a nominee, who felt it was beneath her to show the courtesy. As Gaffigan said, we're here in New York City, and this room is filled with Catholics and Jews. You're not going to get a more friendly audience than the people that are sitting here tonight. And yet she decided she didn't want to be a part of that. Now, my instincts tell me she didn't want to be a part of it, not because she didn't want to have to sit across from Trump. She didn't want to be a part of it because she's got stage fright. She knows. Even if the lines are written for her, even if they give her a teleprompter, if something goes wrong, she doesn't know what to do. And she didn't want to look humiliated in front of what is perceived as a national audience. And so she didn't want to be there for that. So she took the coward's way out. And even taking the coward's way out, there was a right way to do that. But she is a part of the radical left that so hates this country and so hates we conservatives and libertarians that she couldn't even do a simple 3-minute video with Shannon and make it funny. And that goes to show how much contempt she has for anyone who doesn't agree with her politics. That's the reason why she did not want to be there, because she did not want to show the ugly face underneath all that foundation that she wears.
Yeah. It was unscripted, and they only had a teleprompter for Gaffigan. Trump had to refer to notes, and he mostly read through his jokes reluctantly. But I had stated many times that Kamala could have done just a straight address to camera, 3-minute video saying, sorry I couldn't be there, but I respect the institution and everybody vote for me. And maybe try to crack one joke. It was taped, so she could have tried it 100 times to make sure it landed. I don't think she needed Molly Shannon. I think that weakened her position.
Well, I agree with you. But going on the fact that she wanted to insert a modicum of humor into her address, they could have done a really good skit, but they chose to do the opposite.
Yeah.
And by doing that, it illustrates this woman's contempt for people who don't agree with her.
Yep.
That's not how you're going to bring a country together.
Yeah.
Okay.
They
don't want this country to be brought together.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
She's getting a lot of flack from a recent rally she had where there were a couple young Christian men that shouted out, Christ is King, Christ is Lord, or Jesus is Lord, Christ is King. And I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, and she said,
yeah, go ahead.
She said, oh, you're at the wrong rally. That's the rally down the street, referring to the Trump rally. And she said that Christians are pissed.
Well, wouldn't you be? I mean, forget the politics for a second, Rudy. Let's say you had no real interest in politics. Yes, you do your civic duty. Every 2 and 4 years, you go to the polls. You do what you got to do as being a productive and patriotic citizen of this country. But you don't follow politics. What she did was say to people who have faith, I don't care if you're Christian, I don't care if you're Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim. I thought the only people she got a rise out of were the atheists. Even the agnostics probably scratched their head and said, man, that's really disrespectful.
Really?
Yeah. How can you say that to what is more than 65% of this country? Oh, you believe in the Lord? Well, you're at the wrong rally. You need to go to that other rally. And she even said that smaller rally down the street. Hey, sister, watch your mouth, because you're protected under free speech to lie about who has the smaller rally. But everywhere Trump goes, it's SRO or people are turned away. We don't have to, Rudy, you and I don't have to mention how many rallies people come last minute because they couldn't get a ticket, hoping they're going to get in and get turned away when they go to a Trump rally.
Yep.
Okay? And that's not, I mean, look what just happened, what was it, 3 weeks ago when he went back to Butler? There were over 100,000 people there.
Yep.
Did anyone, including Fox, make that mention? I'm not talking about Jesse. I'm talking about Brett Baer. Did Brett Baer make a mention the following Monday on how over 100,000? That's not my numbers. That's what state police said. Okay. over 100,000 people showed up in Butler. They've never seen anything like that in Butler, ever. That's rural America. So let's compare the two. People they pay, in some cases, to come to a Trump rally. You have to pay to bus people to yours. And people leave shortly thereafter. Now, since time is of the essence.
Yes. Let's get to the intelligence leak. So Joe Biden and his administration leaked Israeli intelligence to Iran. What's up with that?
Well, as upset as I am as a man of faith in Judaism and obviously a Zionist, I'm more concerned than I am upset, if you can believe that one. And let me tell you why I'm concerned. I'm going to bring you back to March or April when Fox had their cameras on the border, and the reporter, I'm not sure who the reporter was. It could have been either one of them, but I think it was Griff. And there was a guy, olive skin, wavy hair, with a mustache, and he just politely walked up to him and said, "Sir, who are you and where did you come from?" And the guy didn't want to answer, and Griff kept pushing him. And he said, "Soon enough," and it wasn't in a Hispanic accent, "soon enough, you will know who I am." Now, people like him, who I believe he is a terrorist, who have been ushered into this country, are being organized. And I honestly think, and this is something our government isn't telling us, they are planning whatever, I don't think it's going to be a mushroom cloud, but whatever they're trying to do, they're going to take down our grid. And I don't mean just electrical. I mean, people are going to be set back into the pioneer days. I believe a message was sent because we have envoys that talk to the Iranians, and there are Iranians that act as an envoy to talk to us, even though we don't have embassies in either country anymore. And I honestly believe we were warned. If you don't pull the Israelis back, we're coming after you, not them. And I think that is the reason why this piece of garbage from the State Department, I've misplaced his name. I really need to start having handwritten notes when I come onto your show. I apologize to your audience. I don't remember who this guy's name is, but this guy should not be anywhere near classified information. It was that individual high up, not a deputy secretary of state, but high up, who provided information and made it public. He didn't just hand it to the Iranians. It was publicized as to what the Israelis were planning for their retaliatory strike in Iran. And that is the reason why Israel has not gone through with their attack yet. But I'm going to tell you that as scared as I am about what they're planning to do to our country, whether it's on, before, or after the election, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And now that Israel, just like the rest of our allies around the world, knows that they can no longer trust our country to keep secrets. I'm talking about the Five Eyes. Now that they know we can't, at least with this administration, be trusted to keep secrets. Whatever future attack Israel plans, and trust me, it's going to happen. We're not even going to be told once they launch. We're going to find out about it on Fox News. Our government's going to find out about it on Fox News. That's what I see coming. And that is because we have a government that can't be trusted.
Yeah.
Not only can't be trusted by its own people, can't be trusted by its allies.
Yeah. I constantly say I think the left has an alliance with a bunch of nefarious groups, including Islamic militants, whether they're Sunni or Shia. I don't think it matters to them, because it's you know, do you control the nefarious actors or do you let them be? You're always better off if you're controlling nefarious groups than if you don't control them. So, and then when you do control them, then you could share intelligence if need be, or you could help them execute an attack or look the other way when they want to do that. So, if it behooves you.
I can make it an even simpler point than you have. The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
And that's the point. The radicals of the left in the Democrat Party see us as their sworn enemy. They don't see radical Islam as their enemy. Not necessarily their friend, but we are the demon whose head must be severed. That's how the radical left in the Democrat Party sees us. So naturally, they turn a blind eye to whatever it is radicals in other cultures have and what actions those radicals commit, because they don't see them as an enemy of their own. That's the problem. And that goes right to the point of why I call them traitors. Because they are. They are. This is not the party of JFK or LBJ, or for that matter, I can't believe I'm even saying this, of even Bill Clinton.
Right.
This is a party who became radicalized in 2007, nominated and got elected a radical. And that's what Obama was. He was a radical with a gentlemanly voice and smile. It wasn't me. Go ahead.
He was a CIA construct made to push socialist ideas and make them mainstream. Anything else? We're going to try to wrap it up here. Why don't you give me some parting notes on all of this? Well,
I want to direct us back in these closing seconds to the election. You know, we have said repeatedly over the last 16 years, this is the most important election of our lifetime. Well, while it may have been true during those previous 3 elections, I'm telling you, if we do not win this election, although there will always be an America, it isn't going to be the America we live in. And I said this on your show once or twice in the last 100 podcasts that you have blessed me with being a part of. That when my son was a little boy and he was going to Taekwondo, I would have conversations with him, adult conversations on a child's level. And one of those conversations was, Zach, the world you're living in is not the world you are going to inherit. Now, I said that somewhere between 16 and 18 years ago. He's 26 now. Not me. My son came to my wife 6 months ago and recited that conversation, that bullet point of conversation to my wife. And he said, you know, I understood what Dad was telling me then, but I thought Dad was crazy. Now I see he really knew what was happening. My fear is that if we don't win this election, we are no longer going to have a country. A country will be here, but it won't be the country we grew up in, and it won't be the country we love and we're willing to die for. Nope. And I'm going to continue to emphasize over these next 2 episodes, the last one being on, of all things, Election Day. Please, don't just go vote. Take 10 people with you, because we got to be too big to be cheated. Right. As Rudy always says, we too big to rig. I really am that concerned, and I don't want any complacency, because the polls are saying, well, Trump is in the lead. It doesn't matter that he's in the lead. What matters is not only he wins, but Republicans, whether we like that particular candidate. Look, we can primary them in 2 or 6 years, depending on what office they hold. If I had to vote, if I lived in Utah, thank God he chose not to run again. If I lived in Utah and I had to vote for Mitt Romney right now, I would. That and your audience knows how much I can't stomach that piece of garbage either. Yeah, because the alternative is worse.
We're all pulling for Hogan in Maryland too. So
yeah, a good example. Hogan, yeah. Larry Hogan is a good example.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, he's an anti-Trumper, but he's running for Senate. He was the governor of Maryland, and we're all pulling for him. This is not the time to split tickets. This is the time to make sure that an ineffective, another empty suit, another figurehead run by the establishment is not put into office, because the real agenda is to undermine the very foundation of this country, which is liberty. Thanks for joining me tonight, Perry. It was great to talk to you. Can't wait to talk to you next week. We're coming up on episode 100 of Tuesdays with Perry, so we're going to have a special surprise for everybody then too. Thanks for joining me, Perry, and I'll see you next week.
Brother, I'm looking forward to it. And until then, be well, and may everyone in your audience stay well.
Same to you, man.
All right. Bye-bye now.
See ya. All right, there goes Perry. Tuesdays with Perry, episode 95. We're coming up on 100. Yeah, I implore everybody to go out and vote. And I beg you to vote Republican. You don't have to. It's up to you. But if you look at the facts, this isn't a time to experiment with what we don't know or what we do know, which could possibly be another 4 years of a Biden-type presidency, which would ruin the economy and probably get us into World War III. So let's try to get Trump in there. 4 more years. What do you got to lose? He's not a fascist. He's not going to be throwing people in jail and rounding people up with the military. Well, maybe illegal aliens, but not going to get into that now. Episode 95, Tuesdays with Perry. Thanks for joining me. Join me tomorrow for my morning podcast, 10 a.m. on Rumble, Rudy's Revelation. See you then. Peace out.
Listen up.